Hello there, and welcome. Tonight, we're going to drift back in time, far, far back, into the quiet and sometimes quirky history of the smartphone. Let your mind begin to unwind. Let the concerns of the day begin to soften as we prepare to travel together on a long, slow journey into the past. For all the sleek, cool glass and polished metal we hold so effortlessly in our hands today, for all the immense power and instant connection they seem to represent, it is so easy to forget that this technology is still so new, so young, and its story is filled with strange, winding beginnings, with forgotten pioneers who dreamed of the future, and with quiet mysteries that tell a long, slow, and deeply human story of ingenuity. Some parts of this story are truly epic, stretching across decades and decades of patient innovation, of trial and error. Others live in the smallest of details, the tiny, forgotten moments that have been lost to the winds of time. A curious name for a new invention, a bold design choice that seemed so very important at the time, or a clever feature that briefly shone so brightly before fading away into the mists of history. These stories, both the grand and the humble, remind us that technology is not a book of final, unchangeable truths. It is not a fixed and certain destination. It is a flowing river, an endless story, a story that is still being written, even now, as you rest. Each fact we explore together holds a small doorway to wonder, a quiet reminder that we are always exploring, always building on the dreams of those who came before us. If you enjoy drifting off to these kinds of explorations, feel free to like and subscribe. It is a small Death Star, but building on the bigger things in life. Quiet gesture that helps our community grow. Or simply share your thoughts down in the comments below. It helps other quiet minds, other people seeking a place of rest, find their way here too. But for now, that is all in the future. For now, just settle in, deeper and deeper into comfort. Let these 100 surprising stories, these 100 quiet whispers from the past, carry you gently and effortlessly toward a state of deep and peaceful sleep. And if you're ready, if you feel yourself beginning to let go of the day, let's begin. RSP, the Section 1, the Pioneers. It's so interesting to think that the long journey of the smartphone, this incredible device that has become so central in our lives, begins with something that wasn't even called one. The term, the very word smartphone, didn't exist yet. It was an idea, a feeling, a possibility, just waiting patiently to be named. To find its true origin, we have to travel all the way back, letting our thoughts drift and float through the years, back and back to 1992. 1992. In the quiet, focused labs of IBM, a dedicated team was carefully piecing together a silent pioneer, a device they called the Simon Personal Communicator. The Simon. It was the very first true attempt, the first real, tangible effort to weave the functions of a cell phone and a personal digital assistant, or PDA, into a single unified object. Imagine the immense challenge of that. Taking these two completely separate things, a phone for talking, a PDA for organizing, and patiently merging them into one. This early ancestor, the Simon, was a fascinating glimpse of what was to come. It had a monochrome, liquid crystal display, a simple green and black screen, glowing softly in the dark. And it used a small plastic stylus for its touchscreen. You would tap and draw on the screen with this little pen. It was already reaching for the future, allowing you to send and receive not just emails, but even faxes, right from the palm of your hand. And inside its simple software, it held an address book, a calendar, a calculator, and a world clock. These were the very first whispers, the earliest, faintest hints of what we now call mobile apps. These simple, essential tools, arriving on the market in 1994, were the very first seeds of the vast app ecosystem we know and depend on today. And why the name Simon? It's a wonderfully simple story. The marketing team, tasked with naming this strange and complex new device, landed on Simon as a gentle nod to the children's game Simon Says. They were hoping to make this new, intimidating technology feel familiar, feel easy and approachable. The name suggested the device was so simple it just did what you told it to do. Simon Says send a fax. A simple, friendly name for a truly revolutionary idea. But this pioneering device was so far from the sleek, impossibly thin rectangles we know today. It's hard to even imagine. Try to picture holding something that weighed over a pound, or about half a kilogram. It was a true brick, as these early phones were so often called. Heavy, bulky, solid. It had a real presence in your hand. Its battery was just as limiting, a constant source of anxiety. It offered only about 1 single hour of talk time. 1 hour before its energy was spent, and it would need to be tethered to a charger all over again. It makes you wonder how they managed at all. This incredibly short battery life is a big reason the Simon was only sold for 6 short months. A brief, flickering moment in the long history of time. And yet, even in that brief window, from August of 1994 to February of 1995, around 50,000 units of the IBM Simon were sold. 50,000 for a piece of technology that cost over $1,000, which would be more than $2,000 in today's money. It was a surprisingly strong start for something so completely, so radically new. The word smartphone itself wouldn't be spoken for another few years. It first appeared in the year 1997. The company Ericsson used it while describing a new prototype they were working on. The prototype was called the GS88, but it had an internal nickname, Penelope. Like the Simon, Penelope was also dreaming of merging a phone and a PDA. But this particular dream, this Penelope, never made it to the market. It remained just a dream, a whisper in a lab. Before these first smartphones, the world had PDAs, personal digital assistants. They were the true predecessors, the ancestors of mobile computing. One of the earliest was a device called the Scion Organizer, which launched way back in 1984. With its tiny sliding keyboard and its simple small screen, it was patiently laying the groundwork. It was one of the very first ways that people could carry their digital lives with them, out into the world. The real breakthrough for PDAs, however, arrived much later in 1996 with the Palm Pilot. Its creators were completely obsessed with one core idea: making something that was truly, genuinely pocket-sized. One of them, a man named Jeff Hawkins, famously carried a simple small wooden block, a block carved to the device's exact intended dimensions, in his shirt pocket for weeks and weeks on end. He did this just to be sure the feeling, the size and weight against his body was exactly right. The Palm Pilot also introduced the world to a very clever handwriting system called graffiti. It was a special, simplified alphabet that the device could easily and reliably understand. You had to learn a whole new way to write your letters, a new way to form an A or a B. But it was so effective, so reliable, that it became a defining, beloved part of the Palm experience for years and years. It's amazing to consider now that the very first Palm Pilot 1000 had only 128 kilobytes of memory. 128 kilobytes. That's thousands and thousands of times less than a typical smartphone today. Yet somehow, it was enough. It was enough to hold thousands of contacts and appointments. This incredible efficiency allowed it to run for weeks and weeks on just 2 simple AAA batteries. Before Palm's great success, Apple had its own ambitious go at a PDA. In 1993, they launched the Newton MessagePad. It was an incredibly ambitious device, especially with its handwriting recognition, which was supposed to understand normal, cursive handwriting. But it became famous, almost infamous, for being unreliable, for misreading words in comical and frustrating ways. That, along with its high price and its large size, created a perfect opening in the market for the simpler, more focused Palm Pilot to capture the world's imagination. The Palm Pilot became more than just a tool. It became a quiet status symbol in the late 1990s. Pulling one out in a meeting was a silent signal to everyone in the room. It said that you were organized, that you were forward-thinking, and that you were tech-savvy. This powerful cultural appeal helped it sell over 1 million units in its first 2 years alone. And it had a feature that, at the time, felt like a little bit of pure magic. Using an infrared port on the top of the device, 2 Palm users could beam information to each other. You would just point your devices at one another, maybe a foot apart, and in a silent, invisible instant, you could share contact information, notes, or even little applications. It was a silent, wireless handshake, a simple, invisible connection that beautifully foreshadowed the effortless sharing we all take for granted today. Then there was a Canadian company called Research in Motion, or RIM. This was the company that would eventually give the world the BlackBerry. founded way back in 1984 by two engineering students, RIM spent its first decade not making phones at all. Instead, it was busy exploring and developing all sorts of wireless data technologies, from complex two-way pagers to specialized barcode readers for the film industry. The first device to actually bear the name BlackBerry wasn't a phone either. It was a two-way pager, released in 1999. It was designed with a single, laser-focused purpose in mind: to do one thing exceptionally well: email. It could send and receive messages instantly and reliably, no matter where you were. This one feature, this instant, on-the-go email, would become the very heart of the entire BlackBerry brand. The name itself, BlackBerry, came from a very simple, elegant observation. A branding consultant noticed that the tiny oval keys on its keyboard, all clustered together, resemble the little bumps, the little droplets on a blackberry fruit. The name was suggested, and it stuck, growing into one of the most iconic and beloved names in the history of technology. It's strange to think now that the first BlackBerry devices couldn't even make phone calls. They were purely for text-based communication. Voice capability wasn't added until the year 2002 with a model called the BlackBerry 5810. And even then, you had to use a headset. The device itself had no built-in microphone or earpiece for voice. You had to plug something in just to have a conversation. The secret to what made the BlackBerry so completely addictive, so compelling for so many, was its push email. Other devices, like the Palm Pilot, had to be told to check for new mail. You had to manually sync them to get your messages. A BlackBerry just delivered it, the very moment it arrived, with a little vibration and a flash of a tiny red light. This instant, constant, ever-present connection led to its famous and fitting nickname, the Crackberry. And lurking beneath the surface of all these early devices, these Palms and BlackBerries and many others, was an operating system that quietly, almost invisibly, dominated the market: Symbian. Developed by a powerful group of phone makers, including Nokia and Ericsson. For most of the early 2000s, Symbian was the undisputed king of smartphone software. It was the quiet power behind the throne. The first phone to be officially marketed with the word smartphone was the Ericsson R380 in the year 2000. It ran on that powerful Symbian operating system and had this absolutely fascinating design. It featured a black and white touchscreen that was completely hidden beneath a flip-down keypad. When the keypad was down, it looked just like a normal phone of the era. But when you flipped it up, it revealed the smart screen underneath. It truly felt like holding a small piece of the future in your hand. And of course, we have to remember Motorola, the company that gave the world the very first truly portable mobile phone back in 1984, the Dynatac 8000X. It was another one of those famous brick phones, weighing an incredible 2 pounds and costing nearly $4,000. After charging for a full 10 hours, it gave you just 30 minutes of talk time. It was pure status symbol, a sign of immense wealth and power. The idea of a camera in your phone was still pure science fiction for most people. The very first photograph ever shared from a phone happened in 1997, and it was a moment of pure, wonderful improvisation. An entrepreneur named Philippe Kahn was at the hospital while his wife was in labor. He quickly rigged together a digital camera, a flip phone, and a laptop computer, creating a makeshift system to send a photo of his newborn daughter to over 2,000 people around the world. That was the first. The first phone you could actually buy with a camera already built in was the Kyocera VP210, released in Japan in 1999. Interestingly, it was mainly designed for video calls, not for taking snapshots. It had a front-facing camera, a feature that wouldn't become standard for more than a decade. And its memory was so incredibly small, it could only hold about 20 images before it was full. But the phone that truly started our collective love affair with mobile photography was the Sharp JSH04, released in Japan in late 2000. It had a tiny 0.1 megapixel sensor, but it could do something absolutely revolutionary. It could take a picture and instantly send it to someone else as a message. This simple, fluid act, snap a photo, send a photo, was a complete game changer for human connection. And the early phone batteries, they carried their own unique frustrations. They used an old chemistry called nickel-cadmium, and they suffered from something that was called the memory effect. This meant that if you didn't let the battery drain completely to zero before you started recharging it, it would remember that shorter cycle, and in doing so, it would gradually reduce its total capacity over time. It forced users to be very deliberate, a small, constant anxiety that we've thankfully since left behind in the past. Section 2. The pre-iPhone era. As we drifted gently into the new millennium, into the early 2000s, one name stood far above all others in the mobile world: Nokia. The Finnish company was so dominant, so incredibly powerful, that for a time, it held over 40% of the entire global mobile phone market. Their phones were known everywhere for three simple things. They were nearly indestructible, they were incredibly easy and intuitive to use, and they had batteries that seemed to last forever. One of their most iconic creations, a device that became a true piece of tech legend, was the Nokia 3310 from the year 2000. It became a piece of internet folklore, famous around the world for its supposed invincibility. Even today, you'll find memes and stories and videos online, all celebrating the incredible drops and impacts that this tough little phone could survive time and time again. And the classic Nokia ringtone, that familiar, cheerful tune that everyone recognized. It is actually a small piece of 19th century classical music. It's a short, memorable phrase from a waltz called Grande Valse, written by the Spanish composer Francisco Tárrega. Nokia was one of the very first companies to give their phones a melodic, recognizable voice that was all their own. This was an era defined by a kind of bold, wonderful, physical creativity in phone design. Nokia, more than anyone, seemed to be constantly asking, what else could a phone look like? They gave us designs that felt like they were pulled from a science fiction film. there was a phone ingeniously disguised as a lipstick case. The model 7280. Another one, the 3650, had its keys arranged in a perfect, peculiar, and unforgettable circle. And there were phones that unfolded like a secret message, revealing a full keyboard hidden inside. One of their most ambitious and famous experiments was the N-Gage from 2003. This strange device was an attempt to fuse a smartphone with a dedicated gaming console, aiming to challenge Nintendo's hugely popular Game Boy Advance. But it had a fatal design flaw. To make a simple phone call, you had to hold the device sideways on its thin, narrow edge, right against your head. This awkward, clumsy posture led to it being mockingly and famously called the taco phone. And to play a game on that first N-Gage, the process was even more awkward and strange. It wasn't as simple as just plugging in a cartridge. You had to pop off the entire back cover of the phone. Then, you had to carefully remove the battery itself, and only then could you access the hidden slot to put the game in. This cumbersome ritual, along with the dreaded side talking, was a major design flaw that kept the N-Gage from ever finding true, widespread success. Nokia also explored the glamorous world of high-fashion phones. In 2003, they released the 1760, a strange teardrop-shaped phone that was all about making a bold visual statement. It was visually stunning, certainly unique and memorable. But with its keys arranged awkwardly around the sides of the screen, it was very, very difficult to actually use for texting or dialing a number. They even toyed with the very strange idea of a phone with no screen or battery at all. A curious device called the Nokia card phone. It was a thin card that held your SIM card, but to use it, it had to be plugged into a laptop to draw power and use the laptop's much larger screen. It was a curious early experiment in making the phone a simple accessory to a more powerful computer for hikers and sailors and explorers. It allowed them to load maps onto the device and see their location as a small dot on the screen. This was at a time when GPS was still mostly a restricted tool for the military. It's also interesting to remember that for many, many years, the United States government intentionally degraded the accuracy of all civilian GPS signals. This policy was called selective availability. It was a deliberate reduction in precision for national security reasons. But in the year 2000, it was switched off. Almost overnight, GPS technology became 10 times more accurate for everyone on Earth. A crucial, quiet step that paved the way for the amazing navigation apps we all now rely on every single day. The first version of the mobile internet was a technology called WAP, which stood for Wireless Application Protocol. Introduced in the late 90s, WAP provided a very spare, very simple, text-based version of the web. Browsing on your phone was incredibly slow. The pages were just plain text, and the data was very, very expensive. It was a frustrating but tantalizing first glimpse of the amazing potential that was still to come. The first phone to truly popularize having a full QWERTY keyboard was the Nokia 9000 communicator, all the way back in 1996. It was a large, clamshell device. When it was closed, it looked like a chunky phone of the time, but it opened up horizontally, like a tiny laptop computer, revealing a wide screen and a full keyboard inside. It became a favorite of business executives, a powerful, pocket-sized office. Pay, break, and long before official app stores existed, you could still install third-party apps on some of the more advanced Symbian phones. But it was a very difficult process, a complex ritual for true tech enthusiasts. You had to find the app online, download it to a desktop computer, connect your phone to the computer with a data cable, transfer the file over, and then go through a complex, multi-step installation process on the phone itself. Break. The shift from black and white to color screens was a slow, gradual dawn. The early ones could only show a few hundred colors, and they had very low resolution, making everything look grainy. RIM, the maker of BlackBerry, for example, released its first model with a color screen in 2003. It was a major milestone, and it very quickly became a feature that everyone expected to have on a high-end phone. The first phone with a 1-megapixel camera was the Sharp JSH53, released in Japan in 2003. This was a huge leap in quality from the 0.1 or 0.3 megapixel cameras that came before it. It really kicked off the megapixel race, where every company began vying to offer more and more resolution in their phone cameras, a race that continues to this day. The idea of a phone that was also a serious, dedicated music player was pioneered by devices like the Siemens SL45 in 2001. It was one of the very first to include a slot for a removable memory card, so you could expand the storage for your music. And it came with a pair of stereo headphones right in the box. For the very first time, you could carry a decent-sized music collection on your phone. A quiet prelude to the iPod's eventual reign over the world of digital music. And for a long time, every single phone maker had their own unique proprietary charger plug. It was a time of pure chaos. If you switched from a Nokia to a Motorola or a Siemens to a Sony Ericsson, all of your old chargers and cables became instantly useless. Many of us have thankfully forgotten this era of charger frustration, of junk drawers filled to the brim with a tangled mess of obsolete cables. A forgotten power that many older phones had was the infrared or IR blaster. This little component allowed the phone to act as a universal remote control for your television, your stereo, or other appliances around your home. It was a handy, simple little feature that has now mostly vanished from modern designs, though a few brands do still include it as a nostalgic, thoughtful touch. The Palm OS, which had been so incredibly successful on PDAs, also found its way to a new category of devices: smartphones. The handspring Treo 180 was one of the first to combine that beloved, simple operating system with a mobile phone. It featured a protective flip lid and a full thumb keyboard, which made it a true productivity powerhouse for its time. In the early 2000s, there was a brief, wonderful trend of phones with swiveling parts and satisfying mechanical actions. The Motorola V70, for instance, had a striking circular screen and a cover that rotated a full 360 degrees around it to reveal the keypad underneath. It was more about mechanical style than pure function, but it stood out in a world of simple, static, candy bar phones. Then there was the Sidekick, made by a company called Danger. Its signature move was a screen that would flip up and rotate around with a satisfying snap, revealing a big, comfortable keyboard underneath. It became hugely popular, especially with younger people, and was one of the first phones that felt truly designed for a social, always connected text messaging life. Before the iPhone completely reshaped the entire industry, Microsoft was a major player in the smartphone world with its Windows mobile operating system. It was designed to look and feel like a miniature version of desktop Windows, complete with a tiny start menu and a stylus for navigation. It was powerful and very flexible, but it often felt complex and clunky to use compared to its rivals. And then there was the Motorola Razr V3 from 2004. It wasn't technically a smartphone, but it was a true cultural phenomenon. It was impossibly thin for its time, with a sleek aluminum body and a futuristic, flat, chemically etched keypad. Its design was so desirable, so intensely iconic, that Motorola sold over 130 million of them, making it one of the best-selling flip phones in all of history. The hold that BlackBerry had on the business world was simply immense. At its peak, around the year 2010, the company held approximately 43% of the entire US smartphone market. It became so essential for work, so deeply tied to corporate life, that many people famously carried two separate devices, a BlackBerry for their job and another, different phone for their personal life. By September of 2011, there were 85 million BlackBerry subscribers spread all across the globe. 85 million. The brand had built a massive, secure, and incredibly reliable infrastructure. But this huge, loyal user base, this seemingly unshakable kingdom, was standing right on the very edge of a seismic shift that almost no one, especially not BlackBerry itself, saw coming. And then, on January 9th, 2007, the story of the smartphone takes a very sharp, dramatic turn. This is the moment when Steve Jobs stood on a stage and unveiled the very first iPhone. He wasn't just showing the world a new phone. He was presenting a whole new idea of what a phone could be. He framed it as three revolutionary products, all elegantly woven into one single device. A widescreen iPod with touch controls, a revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communications device. The true revolution wasn't just the technology itself, but this seamless, beautiful, and intuitive fusion of functions. Internally at Apple, the secret project name for the iPhone was Project Purple. The team working on it was shrouded in a legendary, intense level of secrecy. Different groups worked on the hardware and the software completely separately, with many of the engineers not even knowing what the final, complete product would actually be. It's strange to think now that during the iPhone's development, Steve Jobs wasn't entirely convinced that a phone was the right path forward. He was initially pushing for Apple to create a touchscreen tablet first, but the engineering team eventually persuaded him that the technology they were developing could be successfully miniaturized for a phone. The iPhone project moved forward, and the tablet idea was put on hold, only to re-emerge a few years later as the iPad. The screen on that original iPhone was made of glass, not plastic. At the time, nearly every other phone on the market used a plastic screen to prevent it from shattering when dropped. But Jobs insisted on using glass for its superior feel, its optical clarity, and its resistance to scratches. To find glass that was strong enough for the task, Apple began a crucial partnership with a company called Corning, creating what would eventually be known to the world as Gorilla Glass. When it was first unveiled, the first iPhone was actually missing many features that other smartphones of the era already had. It couldn't connect to the faster 3G mobile network. It was stuck on a much slower network called Edge. It couldn't copy and paste text. And most surprisingly of all, it had no app store. Every single app on the phone was made by Apple, and you couldn't add any more. In fact, Steve Jobs was initially completely against the very idea of letting outside developers make apps for the phone. He believed they should instead create web apps, specialized websites that would run in the iPhone's Safari browser. It took a great deal of persuasion from others at Apple and a great deal of internal debate to finally change his mind. The App Store finally launched a full year later, in July of 2008, and it changed everything. That first iPhone launched exclusively with the carrier AT&T in the United States, and the network struggled mightily to keep up with the immense data demands of all these new iPhone users. The slow speed of that Edge network was a major, constant point of criticism for those first pioneering iPhone owners. The original 4GB model of the iPhone was priced at $499. But just 2 months after its much-hyped launch, Apple made a sudden, unexpected move. They discontinued that model entirely and dropped the price of the larger 8GB version by a full $200. This created a huge outcry from the early adopters who had just paid the full price. In response to the backlash, Steve Jobs offered them all a $100 credit for the Apple Store as a gesture of apology. Meanwhile, in the meantime, in the background, another quiet revolution was slowly brewing. The Android operating system wasn't born at Google. It was developed by a small startup company called Android Inc., which was founded in 2003. And their initial idea wasn't for phones at all. They were trying to build an advanced operating system for digital cameras, with the goal of making them smarter and more connected. When the founders of Android Inc. realized that the market for smart camera software was simply too small, they cleverly pivoted their idea to mobile phones. Google, seeing the immense potential, quietly bought the small company in 2005 for an estimated $50 million. The small team, led by Andy Rubin, continued their work deep inside Google in complete secrecy. The very first Android phone to be sold to the public was the T-Mobile G1, also known as the HTC Dream. It came out in October of 2008. It was a curious hybrid device, a fascinating bridge between the old world and the new. It had a large touchscreen, just like the iPhone, but you could also slide the screen to the side with a satisfying click, and it would reveal a full physical keyboard. It even had a little trackball for navigation, just like a classic BlackBerry. Google's strategy with the Android operating system was the complete opposite of Apple's closed, secretive approach. Instead of building a closed, controlled system, they chose to give their operating system away for free, making it open source for any manufacturer to use and modify as they saw fit. Their brilliant plan was to profit not from the software itself, but from the Google services that ran on it, like search, maps, and advertising. This open source decision is the primary reason that Android spread across the entire globe so incredibly rapidly. The little green Android robot logo, that friendly, iconic character, was created by a designer named Irina Block. And just like the software it represents, the design was meant to be open and playful. Google encouraged people and other companies to modify and play with the character, which has led to thousands and thousands of creative, wonderful versions of the beloved little robot. And then there are the famous dessert names. Starting with version 1.5, which was called Cupcake. Every major public release of Android was named after a sweet treat, and they followed in alphabetical order. This playful tradition, from cupcake to donut to eclair and so on, became a well-known and friendly signature of the Android brand. The very first versions, 1.0 and 1.1, didn't have public dessert names, but they did have their own internal code names, Astro Boy and Bender. When the Apple App Store finally launched in July of 2008, it started with just 500 apps. In its very first weekend, those 500 apps were downloaded an astonishing 10 million times. 10 million. That immediate, explosive success showed the entire world the immense, untapped hunger for mobile applications. It created a brand new app economy almost overnight. One of the most famous, or perhaps infamous, early iPhone apps was a very simple one called iFart. It did exactly what its name suggests. But through simple word of mouth, it became a viral sensation, and at its peak, it was earning its developer nearly $10,000 a day. It was a silly, but incredibly powerful demonstration of how a single person, a single developer, could have a massive global hit on this new and exciting platform. Samsung, the company that is now the world's largest smartphone maker, was actually a bit slow to join this new smartphone race. Their very first Android phone, the Samsung i7500, was released in 2009. But it was the launch of the Samsung Galaxy S in 2010 that truly announced their arrival as a major, powerful force in the market, ready to challenge the iPhone's dominance. The rapid, stunning rise of the iPhone and Android was completely devastating for BlackBerry. The company's leaders at first completely dismissed the iPhone. They truly believed that business professionals, their core audience, would always want a physical keyboard for typing long emails. It was a critical, tragic misjudgment that would prove fatal to their long and prosperous reign. In a desperate attempt to compete with the new touchscreen world, BlackBerry rushed out a device called the BlackBerry Storm in 2008. It had a very strange, clickable touchscreen that tried to mimic the tactile feel of pressing real keys. The entire screen would physically press down when you touched it. But the technology was buggy and deeply frustrating to use, and the device's failure badly damaged the brand's hard-won reputation for quality and reliability. BlackBerry's market share fell with shocking, brutal, and unprecedented speed. From commanding around 43% of the US smartphone market in early 2010, its share collapsed to just 5.9% by early 2013. In just 3 short years, the king of smartphones was suddenly and unexpectedly fighting for its very survival. This same powerful wave of change also crashed over Nokia. Their Symbian operating system, once the undisputed king, now felt dated and clunky next to the fluid, modern experiences of iOS and Android. In a final, dramatic move to save the company, Nokia announced a partnership with Microsoft in 2011, betting its entire future on the Windows Phone operating system. And Palm, another one of the great pioneers, also struggled desperately to survive in this new world. They created a beautiful, modern operating system called WebOS. It was celebrated by critics and tech enthusiasts for its innovative, card-based multitasking and its elegant, fluid design. But the phones that ran it, like the Palm Pre, failed to find a wide audience, and the company was eventually sold to HP and then slowly dismantled. One of the quiet heroes that made modern smartphones possible is a tiny invisible sensor called the accelerometer. It's the component that detects motion, and it knows how you're holding the phone. It's what automatically rotates the screen from portrait to landscape. It's also what enables motion-controlled games, making the experience more physical and interactive than ever before. Another silent hero, working constantly inside your phone, is the ambient light sensor. This tiny little electronic eye constantly measures the brightness of the light in the room around you, and it adjusts the screen's brightness automatically to match. It's a subtle thing, something we rarely even notice, but it saves precious battery life and makes the screen more comfortable to look at, constantly improving our experience without us even knowing it's happening. Section 4. The modern age and quirks. The quality of our phone cameras has improved at a breathtaking, almost unbelievable speed. A lot of that incredible improvement is thanks to something called computational photography. This is a process where the phone's powerful software is intelligently processing the vast amounts of data from the camera sensor to build a better, clearer image. It works by merging multiple shots together, digitally reducing noise, and balancing light and shadow in ways a traditional camera simply can't. HDR, which stands for High Dynamic Range, is a perfect example of this computational magic at work. When you take an HDR photo, your phone is actually capturing several pictures at once, at different exposure levels. It then digitally merges the very best parts of each of those shots. The bright blue sky from the dark photo, the rich detail in the shadows from the bright one, to create a single, perfectly balanced and beautiful image. The selfie has a surprisingly long history. That very first camera phone from 1999, the Kyocera VP210, had a front-facing camera for video calls. But it took the explosion of social media more than a decade later for the selfie to become a true global cultural force. The word selfie itself was even chosen as the word of the year by the Oxford English Dictionary in 2013. Modern high-end phones often have a whole array of different cameras on the back, a cluster of different lenses. They aren't just for show. Each one has a very specific purpose. There's usually a standard wide lens for everyday shots, an ultra-wide lens for capturing grand landscapes and big groups of people, and a telephoto lens that lets you zoom in optically, getting closer to your subject without losing precious image quality. The constant quest to make phones ever thinner and sleeker led to one of the most controversial design changes in recent memory: removing the 3.5mm headphone jack. Apple led the way with the iPhone 7 in 2016, pushing users toward wireless headphones or clumsy, easy-to-lose adapters. Many other companies, after first mocking the decision, soon quietly followed suit. Another feature that has quietly faded away is the removable battery. For years and years, being able to swap a dead battery for a fresh, fully charged one was a key advantage, a major selling point for many phones. But in the pursuit of thinner, more water-resistant bodies, manufacturers began sealing the batteries inside the phone's chassis. It was a choice that also made repairs much more difficult and expensive for the average person. Wireless charging has actually been around for more than a decade, but it's only in the last few years that it has become a standard, expected feature on high-end phones. It works using a principle called magnetic induction. A coil of wire in the charging pad creates an invisible magnetic field, and another coil in the back of the phone converts that invisible field back into electricity, charging the battery without any physical connection at all. It feels like pure magic. For years, the idea of a truly foldable smartphone felt like pure science fiction. The first one to actually be sold to the public was a device called the Royal FlexPi in late 2018. It was a bit clunky and the software was unpolished, but it was a true pioneer. It bravely beat giants like Samsung to the market and proved to the world that flexible, foldable screens were finally real. The black rectangle design of most phones is so uniform now, so completely standardized. But there have been some strange and wonderful modern experiments along the way. The Yoda phone, for instance, had a normal color screen on the front, but on the back, it had a second, low-power e-ink screen, just like the one on a Kindle e-reader. It could be used for reading books or for displaying notifications all day long. It was a clever idea that never quite found its audience. Another wonderfully strange modern design was the LG Wing. Its main screen could swivel a full 90 degrees into a T-shape, revealing a smaller square screen underneath it. You could be watching a video on the main horizontal display while texting a friend on the smaller one below. It was a bold and wonderfully bizarre new approach to multitasking. Most of our phones use lithium-ion batteries, and while they're a huge improvement over the old nickel-cadmium ones, with their memory effect, they still degrade slowly over time. A typical smartphone battery is designed to hold about 80% of its original capacity after around 500 full charge cycles. It's this slow, quiet, invisible aging that makes an older phone's battery life feel so much shorter than when it was new. Fast charging has been a game changer for our daily convenience, but it can also be a little bit harder on the battery's long-term health. The heat that is generated by pushing so much power into the battery so quickly is one of the main enemies of a lithium-ion battery's lifespan. This is why many phones now use smart charging software, which slows the charging process down overnight to help preserve the battery's health over the years. It's one of the great modern mysteries of our time, a quiet question that whispers in the back of many minds. Is our phone secretly listening to us? While it is technically possible, the truth seems to be something quieter, and perhaps even stranger. It appears that they don't need to listen. The intricate web of data they collect about our searches, our locations, our likes, and our friends is so incredibly powerful. They are simply predicting what we're interested in with startling, sometimes unsettling accuracy. The SIM card, which stands for Subscriber Identity Module, has been on a long journey of miniaturization. It started out the size of a credit card. Then it shrank to the mini SIM, then the micro SIM, and now the tiny nano SIM. The next step, which is already here in many phones, is the eSIM, a virtual digital SIM that is built right into the phone's hardware, meaning there's no physical card to lose or swap at all. A modern phone's water resistance is measured with an IP code, or Ingress Protection Code. The rating of IP68, for instance, means the device is completely dust-tight and can survive being submerged in water, usually up to 1.5 meters for about 30 minutes. This remarkable protection is achieved with a careful, hidden network of tiny rubber gaskets, microscopic seals, and waterproof adhesives. Your phone's screen most likely has something called an oleophobic coating. It's an incredibly thin, completely invisible layer of a special polymer that repels oil. It's the reason that fingerprints and smudges from your skin are so easy to wipe away on a new phone. This delicate coating wears away slowly over time, which is why older screens tend to get smudgier and are much harder to keep clean. Haptic feedback is that subtle vibration you feel when you type or interact with your screen. And these haptic systems have become much more advanced in recent years. Instead of a simple buzzing motor that just spins imprecisely, high-end phones now use precise linear actuators. These can create incredibly crisp, precise, and varied vibrations, making virtual buttons feel more physical and more real to the touch. The supply chain that creates a single smartphone is almost impossibly complex. It is a truly global product, a testament to modern logistics. The processor might be designed in the United States, the memory chips made in South Korea, the camera sensors manufactured in Japan, and the screen produced in China, with all of those intricate components coming together for final assembly in yet another country, like Vietnam or India. The raw materials inside your phone come from all over the world, dug from the earth on every single continent. There's lithium for the battery, often from the vast salt flats of South America or the deep mines of Australia. There are rare earth metals for the tiny magnets in the speaker and the haptic motor. There is cobalt, gold, and tin. The journey of these materials from the ground to your hand is a long, complicated, and often hidden one. The software on your phone is in a state of constant, quiet evolution. It's not just about adding new features or changing the look of the icons. A huge part of this evolution is about delivering critical security patches. These regular, quiet updates fix tiny, invisible vulnerabilities in the code that could otherwise be exploited by malicious actors. Keeping your phone updated is one of the most important things you can do to protect your digital self. The idea of a gaming phone, which we first saw with the ill-fated N-Gage, has returned in the modern era. These are niche devices built specifically for high-performance mobile gaming. They often feature extra cooling systems to handle the heat, screens with faster refresh rates for smoother gameplay, and even physical shoulder buttons on the side of the phone to create a more console-like, immersive experience. The highest resolution camera ever put in a smartphone is over 200 megapixels. And while that is an impressive, massive number, the overall quality of a photo isn't just about megapixels. The physical size of the camera sensor, the quality of the glass lens, and the intelligence of the computational photography software are often far more important in creating a truly beautiful and memorable image. Looking toward the horizon, to the future that is just beginning to take shape, scientists and engineers are working on new battery technologies that could change everything once again. Solid-state batteries promise to be safer, to charge much, much faster, and to hold much more energy in the same amount of space. They could be the key to phones that last for several days on just a single charge. Another future concept that feels just over the horizon is the truly portless phone. A device that relies completely on wireless technology for both charging and for data transfer. It would be a perfectly sealed object, a smooth, uninterrupted stone of glass and metal. But it would require all of us to change our relationship with cables and accessories forever. And 100. The long, winding history of the smartphone is a quiet, relentless story of miniaturization. A story of patiently cramming more and more and more power into a smaller and smaller space. What began as a 1-pound brick that could barely last an hour has become a sleek, impossibly thin glass window to the entire world, connecting us in ways the pioneers of this technology could only have dreamed of. And the story, as always, is still being written. The Quiet Dawn, Calculating Dreams, 1984 to 1994. The long journey of mobile computing begins not with a phone, but with a different ambition entirely: to hold a pocket-sized computer. Fact 1. The true precursor to the modern PDA, and thus the smartphone, was the Psion organizer, launched way, way back in 1984, establishing the core concept of portable digital assistants. Fact 2. The famous EL, or positively intimate fact. The journey from darkness to light. Strong, the Scion was engineered with an audacious goal for the time: to be a full computer, small enough to slide into a pocket, containing essential features like clocks, alarms, address books, and a file manager. Fact 3. Despite its consumer marketing, the Scion Organizer 2 achieved significant commercial success in specialized industrial sectors, particularly because it could connect to external hardware accessories like barcode readers and thermal printers. Fact 4. The heart of the Scion Organizer 2 was an incredibly humble Hitachi HD6303XFP processor, operating at an astonishingly low speed of just 0.9 megahertz. This low speed was perfectly sufficient for basic organization and calculations, revealing that efficiency was prioritized over raw power. Fact 5. When first released in 1984, the Scion Organizer was priced at £99 GBP or $199 CAD, making portable digital computing relatively accessible compared to the multi-thousand-dollar mobile phones appearing at the same time. Fact 6. Scion devices used specialized memory cartridges for storage called packs, which came in various types, including EEPROM, EEPROM, or simple battery-backed RAM. Fact 7. Early EEPROM packs presented a strange ritual for data management. They could only be formatted by exposing the chips inside to ultraviolet light, leading Scion to offer a postal service where users could mail their packs in for reformatting. Fact 8. R strong. The Scion Organizer was engineered without a full, independently battery-backed, real-time hardware clock, demonstrating the extreme lengths engineers went to conserve energy in the 1980s. Lists a common fact. Instead of a hardware clock, the machine used a simple internal counter that would briefly and gently wake the device every 1,024 seconds, which is exactly 17 minutes and 4 seconds, allowing the software to update the time record held in RAM. This tiny, constant interruption shows that maximizing battery life by minimizing processing was the core engineering hurdle decades ago. Fact 10. The Scion OS, the foundational software of the Scion Organizer line, played a critical, quiet role in history as it formed the foundation of the powerful Symbian operating system, which would dominate global smartphones in the early 2000s. Fact 11. The very first commercial handheld mobile phone available to the public was the famous Motorola Dynatac 8000X, which was released in 1983, a device that started the whole mobile communication revolution. Fact 12. The Dynatac was huge, standing about 13 inches high and weighing between 1.75 and 2.5 pounds, depending on the model, instantly earning it the infamous and enduring nickname, the Brick. Fact 13. The power demands of this early radio technology were so intense that after charging the Dynatac for a full 10 hours, the user received just 30 minutes of talk time. Fact 14. The original Dynatac 8000X cost nearly $4,000 in 1983. Adjusted for inflation, this cost established the mobile phone not as a convenience, but purely as an immense status symbol for the extremely wealthy and powerful. Fact 15. Although the Dynatac became commercially available in the 1980s, the enabling technology for mobile phones using radio frequencies to connect to the network was first developed and explored way back in the 1940s. The stylus and the brick, birth of the smartphone, 1992-1997. The next step in the journey involved patiently weaving communication and organization into one device, a fusion of technologies that would eventually create the word smartphone. All Start 16, the IBM Simon personal communicator, conceptualized in 1992 and released in 1994, is widely regarded as the very first device to truly and functionally weave the core capabilities of a cellular phone and a personal digital assistant, PDA, into a single, unified object. And released in 1994, is widely regarded as the very first device to truly and functionally weave the core capabilities of a cellular phone and a personal digital assistant. And revolutionary new technology feel familiar and easy to adopt. Fact 18. To navigate this new device, IBM created a unique, dedicated touchscreen software layer called the Navigator, ensuring the user was never confronted by a complex, intimidating DOS prompt. Fact 19. The pioneering Simon was already reaching for the future of mobile data, allowing users to send and receive not just emails, but even business-critical faxes right from its simple monochrome screen, directly from the palm of their hand. Fact 20. Just like its spiritual ancestor, the Dynatac, the Simon suffered from crippling battery limitations, offering only about 1 single hour of talk time before its energy was completely spent, severely limiting its overall utility and mass appeal. Fact 21. This incredibly short battery life, coupled with the increasing popularity of smaller, sleeker flip phones that were appearing on the market, contributed significantly to the IBM Simon spending a mere 6 short months available for sale. Fact 22. Despite its quick commercial demise, around 50,000 units of the Simon were sold between August 1994 and February 1995. A surprisingly strong adoption rate for a piece of technology that cost over $1,000. Fact 22. SATA. Fact 23. Despite its quick commercial demise, around 50,000 units of the Simon were sold between August 1994 and February 1995. A surprisingly strong adoption rate for a piece of technology that cost over $1,000. Fact 24. Despite its quick commercial demise, around 50,000 units of the Simon were sold between August 1994 and February 1995. A surprisingly strong adoption rate for a piece of technology that cost over $1,000. Fact 25. Despite its quick commercial demise, around 50,000 units of the Simon were sold between August 1994 and strong. Fact 23. The Simon was built to be expandable and could be upgraded to run third-party applications, either by inserting a specialized PCMCIA card or by downloading software directly to the phone's internal memory. Then a line 1. Fact 24. Despite the potential, only one official aftermarket third-party application was ever developed, a program called Dispatchit, designed by PDA Dimensions. Then a line 2. Fact 25. The Dispatchit, a revolutionary app, in its early production process was added dosing only in part and for practical purposes, costing $299 for the Simon client and a staggering $2,999 for the required host KeyC software, proving that early mobile data capability was exclusive to high-end corporate users. And Fact 26. Before the successful launch of the Palm Pilot, Apple launched its own ambitious personal digital assistant in 1993, the Newton Message Pad, betting its future on sophisticated handwriting recognition. Before the Fact 27. The Newton became famous, almost infamous, because its ambitious attempt to understand normal cursive handwriting often resulted in it comically and frustratingly misreading words, creating a barrier to widespread user adoption. Line paragraph, Fact 28. In contrast, to ensure the Palm Pilot 1996 was truly pocket-sized and ergonomically perfect, co-creator Jeff Hawkins famously carried a simple wooden block carved to the device's exact intended dimensions in his shirt pocket for weeks. Line paragraph, Fact 29. The very first Palm Pilot 1000 featured only 128 kilobytes of memory, an astonishing level of efficiency that allowed it to perform core functions and run for weeks and weeks on just 2 simple AAA batteries. All but partway, the very word smartphone itself would not be officially spoken until 1997, when the company Ericsson used it while describing a new prototype they were developing, known internally by the gentle codename Penelope. The Pager King and the Waltz, Dominion of Wireless Text, 1996 to 2001. As the calendar turned toward the new millennium, the focus shifted from integrating features to mastering instant communication, leading to the rise of the specialized text device. Fact 31. Research in Motion, the company that would eventually create the BlackBerry, was founded way back in 1984 and spent its entire first decade not making phones at all, but rather developing complex, specialized wireless data technologies. Fact 32. The first device to actually bear the name BlackBerry, the RIM850, was released in 1999. And it was not a phone, but a two-way pager, designed with the single focused purpose of providing instant, reliable email access on the go. This early BlackBerry 850 pager was powered by a 32-bit Intel 386 processor, and perhaps most surprisingly, it drew all its energy from just a single, simple AA battery. Fact 34. The iconic name BlackBerry came from a simple, elegant observation. A branding consultant noticed that the tiny, clustered oval keys on its physical keyboard resembled the little bumps or drupelets that cluster together on a BlackBerry fruit. Fact 35. The secret to the BlackBerry's eventual addictive nature was its push technology, which instantly delivered email the moment it arrived, making it feel constantly connected, a sensation that earned it the nickname, the Crackberry. Fact 36. BlackBerry's early success and its use of this essential push technology led to a protracted, years-long patent dispute with NTP Inc., a legal battle that was eventually settled in 2006 for a staggering sum exceeding $600 million. Strong Fact 37. Even after RIM added voice capability with the BlackBerry 5810 in 2002, the device itself had no built-in microphone or earpiece. Users were strictly required to plug in a headset just to make a conversation. Instead of letting people cancel for conversation, the device's reliability and focus on secure, encrypted messaging led to its rapid adoption on Wall Street and in law firms, establishing it as a must-have tool and a powerful status symbol among white-collar office workers. Instead of letting people cancel for conversation and focusing on conceptual, long-term planning, this tapestry of development, the Finnish company Nokia was the undisputed global leader, holding a massive stake of over 40% of the entire global mobile phone market at its peak. Fact 40. One of Nokia's most culturally iconic creations, the Nokia 3310-2000, achieved legendary status and became a piece of enduring internet folklore because of its supposed, almost unbelievable invincibility. Fact 41. Strong. The instantly recognizable famous classic Nokia ringtone is not original. It is actually a short, memorable phrase taken from a 1902 classical guitar composition. Fact 42. The piece of music that provided the iconic sound is called Gran Vals, written by the Spanish classical guitarist and composer Francisco Tárrega. Fact 43. When the tune first appeared on the Nokia 2110, released in 1994, it was simply listed in the phone's menu and referred to by the mundane name Ringtone Type 5. Fact 44. At the peak of Nokia's market power in 2009, the famous tune was estimated to be heard across the entire world approximately 1.8 billion times every single day, averaging about 20,000 times every second. Fact 45. The enduring global ubiquity of the tune meant that the company was able to successfully register the short, melodic phrase as a sound trademark in several countries. Before full sentence, QWERTY keyboards became standard on phones. The critical problem of rapid text input was revolutionized in 1995 with the quiet introduction of T9, text on 9 keys, predictive technology. Fact 47. T9 allowed users to press each key only once per word. A complex algorithm then intelligently used a built-in dictionary to predict the intended word based on the combination of key presses. Fact 48. T9's success led to a brief battle of predictive text systems, including competing technologies such as Motorola's iTap, RIM's specialized SureType, and others. Fact 49. The Nokia 3310 also featured a mode called Chat Mode, which utilized an enhanced SMS format to create a more fluid, sophisticated messaging experience for users. Fact 50. Hidden beneath the success of both Nokia and the early pioneers, like Ericsson, was a quiet technological powerhouse, the Symbian operating system, which was the undisputed king of mobile software throughout the entire early 2000s. The world through a lens. Camera and internet firsts, 1997 to 2003. This period saw mobile devices begin to connect people not just through voice or text, but through shared experiences, requiring leaps in connectivity and power that were quietly enabled by shifts in military policy and industrial science. Part 5.1. Fact 51. The very first photograph ever successfully shared from a mobile phone system happened in 1997, born out of pure, wonderful improvisation in a hospital while the inventor's wife was in labor. Fact 52. That entrepreneur, Philippe Kahn, quickly rigged together a digital camera, a flip phone, and a laptop computer, creating a makeshift system that allowed him to instantly send a photo of his newborn daughter to over 2,000 people around the world. All the people knew his name. The first phone you could actually buy, with a camera already built in, was the Kyocera VP210, which was released in Japan in 1999. Strong. Fact 54. Interestingly, the Kyocera VP210 was primarily designed for video calls and was equipped with a front-facing camera, a feature that would not become standard and essential on phones for more than a decade. Fact 55. The phone that truly ignited the global love affair with mobile photography was the Sharp JSH04, released in Japan in late 2000, because it introduced the revolutionary, simple act of instantly taking a picture and sending it as a message. Fact 56. This groundbreaking JSH04 featured a minuscule 0.1 megapixel sensor, yet its capability for instant, fluid sharing created a complete game change for modern human connection and communication. Fact 57. Early public reactions to the news of integrated camera phones were surprisingly paranoid, with people commenting that the devices would be ideal for spying and for delicate investigation or infiltration. Strong. The earliest mobile phone batteries utilized an old chemistry called nickel-cadmium, which suffered from a detrimental phenomenon known as the memory effect. Fact 59. The memory effect meant that users were forced to adopt a deliberate ritual. If they failed to let the battery drain completely to zero before recharging, the battery would remember that shorter cycle and gradually, permanently reduce its total capacity over time. Fact 60. The memory effect meant that users were forced to adopt a deliberate ritual. If they failed to let the battery drain completely to zero before recharging, the battery would remember that shorter cycle and gradually, permanently reduce its total capacity over time. Fact 60. Nickel-cadmium, which suffered from a detrimental phenomenon known as the memory effect. The memory effect meant that users were forced to adopt a deliberate ritual. If they failed to let the battery drain completely to zero before recharging, the battery would remember that shorter cycle and gradually, permanently reduce its total capacity over time. Fact 60. The memory effect meant that users were forced to adopt a deliberate ritual. If they failed to let the battery drain this source of constant user anxiety is thankfully a thing of the past. The lithium-ion chemistry used in all modern smartphones does not suffer from the memory effect in any way, shape, or form. Or, fact 61. The first version of the mobile internet to reach phones was WAP, or Wireless Application Protocol, which delivered a frustratingly slow, spare, and entirely text-based version of the World Wide Web. Or, fact 62. Even earlier, obsolete WAP concepts attempted to use multiple SMS text messages to transfer WAP data, an approach that proved prohibitively expensive and ultimately unaffordable for most users. Or, fact 63. For many years, the accuracy of all civilian GPS signals was intentionally crippled by the United States government through a national security policy known as selective availability. Fact 64. For many years, in the year 2000, this policy of selective availability was suddenly switched off. Almost overnight, GPS technology became 10 times more accurate for every civilian user on Earth. A quiet, crucial step that paved the way for the navigation apps we all rely on today. Fact 65. The very first phone to feature a built-in GPS was the Benefon ESC 1999, which was marketed primarily in Europe as a safety and tracking device for outdoor enthusiasts, such as hikers, sailors, and explorers. The transition from these early devices to the modern touchscreen was marked by a series of quiet, crucial technical breakthroughs, creating the foundation for the next wave of revolution. Design Fantasies and Evolutionary Dead Ends, 2001 to 2006. This middle era of smartphone history was defined by wild, chaotic experimentation, where manufacturers, particularly Nokia, explored countless form factors in a search for the perfect combination of function and style. Start 66. Fact 66 were characterized by a kind of bold, physical creativity, with phone designers constantly pushing the boundaries and asking, what else could a mobile phone look like? Fact 67. Nokia launched the N-Gage in 2003, attempting to fuse a smartphone with a dedicated gaming console to challenge the Game Boy Advance. But it suffered from a major, fatal ergonomic flaw. Above, fact 68. The fatal flaw was that to make a simple phone call, users were forced to hold the device sideways, on its narrow, thin edge, right against the side of their head, a posture that immediately earned it the iconic and mocking nickname, the taco phone. Above, fact 69. Even playing a game on the original N-Gage was a cumbersome ritual. The user had to pop off the entire back cover of the phone, carefully remove the battery itself, and only then could they access the hidden slot to put the game cartridge in. Above, fact 70. Nokia also explored high fashion with the teardrop-shaped 7600 2003, which was visually stunning and unique, but proved incredibly difficult to use for texting or dialing because its keys were arranged awkwardly around the sides of the screen. All Start 66. The Fact 71. The company even explored the bizarre, minimalist idea of the card phone, a thin card holding a SIM that had no screen or battery, designed to be used only when plugged into a laptop to draw power and utilize the laptop's display. Fact 72. Although not technically a smartphone, the Motorola Razr V3 2004 was a cultural phenomenon. Its impossibly thin profile, sleek aluminum body, and futuristic, flat, chemically etched keypad led to over 130 million units being sold globally. Strong Fact 73. The Sidekick, manufactured by a company called Danger, popularized the satisfying swivel form factor, where the screen would flip up and rotate to reveal a large, comfortable keyboard underneath, making it hugely popular with younger people focused on text messaging. Someone log? Fact 73. The Sidekick, manufactured by a company called Danger, popularized the satisfying swivel form factor, where the screen would flip up and rotate to reveal a large, comfortable keyboard underneath, making it hugely popular with younger people focused on text messaging. My journey has now begun to take place. Lee, Fact 74. Before the total dominance of touch, the handspring Treo 180 was a powerful, successful pioneer, elegantly combining the simplicity of the beloved Palm OS with a mobile phone and a protective flip lid. Lee, Fact 75. The transition from simple black and white displays to color screens was a slow, gradual process. The earliest color displays could only show a few hundred colors at very low resolution, often looking grainy. It's not responding. Fact 76. Microsoft was a significant player in the early smartphone market with its Windows mobile operating system, which was designed to mimic a miniature version of the desktop OS, complete with a tiny start menu and stylus navigation. Fact 77. The very idea of the phone vibration, or haptic alert, was pioneered by the Motorola StarTAC in 1996, which introduced the VibraCall feature to notify users of incoming calls through a subtle buzzing sensation. Fact 78. The concept of a phone that was also a serious, dedicated music player was pioneered by devices like the Siemens SL45 in 2001, which was one of the first phones to include a slot for a removable memory card and came packaged with stereo headphones. Fact 79. For a long, frustrating time, the industry was mired in charger chaos, where every single phone maker had their own unique proprietary charger plug, instantly rendering old cables useless if a user switched brands. Fact 80. Many older phones included a quiet, forgotten feature called an infrared IR blaster, a small component that allowed the device to function as a universal remote control for televisions, stereos, and other home appliances. Project Purple. The seismic shift 2007 to 2008. The year 2007 marked a sharp, dramatic turn in this quiet history, driven by an intense level of secrecy and revolutionary design philosophy that challenged the established order. The year 2007 marked a sharp, dramatic turn in this quiet history, driven by an intense level of secrecy and revolutionary design philosophy that challenged the established order. Project Purple. The seismic shift, 2007 to 2008, driven by an intense level of secrecy and revolutionary design philosophy that challenged the established order. Project Purple. The seismic shift, 2007 to 2008, driven by an intense level of secrecy and revolutionary design philosophy that challenged the established order. Intense level of secrecy and revolutionary design philosophy that challenged the established order. Project Purple. The seismic shift, 2007 to 2008, driven by an intense level of secrecy and revolutionary design philosophy that challenged Project Purple. In Fact 82, the specialized development lab within Apple headquarters was known informally among the engineers as the Purple Dorm, reflecting the intense, round-the-clock nature of the work, and was said to often smell of pizza. Fact 83. The project was so strictly compartmentalized that a sign on the Purple Dorm door famously quoted the film Fight Club, stating, "The first rule of Project Purple was you don't talk about Project Purple." Fact 84. Hardware and software teams were forced to work completely separately, many engineers not knowing the final, complete product's appearance until the official unveiling. The 2007 keynote unveiling was an incredible technical gamble. Team members backstage were reportedly taking shots of alcohol every time Steve Jobs successfully completed one of the staged demo tasks, because the memory allocation and RAM were still unstable. I.e., Fact 86. During the device's development, Steve Jobs was initially pushing for Apple to create a touchscreen tablet first, and only conceded to the phone idea when the engineering team convinced him the technology could be successfully miniaturized. Fact 87. Jobs was initially entirely against the very idea of letting outside developers make native applications for the phone, believing instead that developers should create web apps, specialized websites running in the Safari browser. Fact 88. The App Store, which would completely revolutionize mobile commerce, finally launched a full year later, in July of 2008, starting with just 500 applications available. Fact 89. The iPhone's superior glass screen required a crucial partnership with Corning, reviving an obscure, decades-old chemically strengthened glass research project from the 1960s, known at the time as Chemcore, which eventually became Gorilla Glass. Fact 90. Despite its revolutionary multi-touch interface, the original iPhone was criticized by early adopters because it could not connect to the faster 3G mobile network speeds of the time, relying instead on the much slower Edge network. Over B. The Open Hand, Rise of the Green Robot, 2003 to 2010. while Apple established its closed ecosystem. A counter-revolution was brewing quietly inside Google, defining a new approach to market share and software distribution. All Start 91. Fact 91. The Android operating system was not originally intended for mobile phones at all. The small startup Android Inc., founded in 2003, initially aimed to create an advanced operating system specifically for digital cameras. And with that preparation, Google, recognizing the potential for the software to pivot to mobile, quietly acquired the small startup Android Inc. in 2005 for an estimated $50 million. PALSNWI. Fact 93. The very first versions of Android 1.0 and 1.1 did not have public desert names. Instead, they had internal, secret code names that referenced cartoon characters, Astro Boy and Bender. Then Fact 94. The system of naming major releases alphabetically after sweet treats, beginning with version 1.5, which was called Cupcake, became a well-known, playful, and friendly signature of the Android brand. Why Fact 95? Fact 95. The iconic little green Android robot logo, Bugdroid, was created by designer Irina Block, and its simple, recognizable design was actually inspired by the universal male and female icons found on restroom signs. Then all strong. Fact 96. Bugdroid was initially intended only for the developer community. Its open and playful nature encouraged people to modify and play with the character, leading to thousands of creative, unique variations across the globe. Elegant web OS system, celebrated for its card-based multitasking, failed to find a wide audience and was eventually dismantled. Its leaders tragically misjudged the shift, believing their core business audience would always want a physical keyboard, a misstep that proved fatal to their market reign. Fact 100. In a desperate attempt to compete with the new market, BlackBerry rushed out the BlackBerry Storm 2008, which featured a strange, clickable touchscreen, where the entire screen physically pressed down to mimic a button, but the buggy technology badly damaged the brand's reputation for reliability. Modern Miracles and Invisible Heroes, 2010 to present. As the core architecture stabilized, innovation moved beneath the surface, focusing on refining user experience, battery life, and durability through invisible component advancements. Fact 1. The quiet hero, responsible for automatically rotating your screen and enabling motion-controlled games, is a tiny, invisible sensor called the accelerometer, which constantly detects motion and how the phone is being held. Fact 2. Another silent worker is the ambient light sensor, a tiny electronic eye that constantly measures the light in the room and automatically adjusts the screen's brightness to match, saving precious battery life and improving comfort. Fact 3. Modern cameras achieve their stunning quality largely through computational photography, a process where the phone's powerful software intelligently merges multiple shots and processes data to create a single, superior image. Fact 4. HDR, or High Dynamic Range, is a perfect example of this computational magic. The phone captures several pictures at different exposure levels and digitally merges the best-lit parts of each into one perfectly balanced final image. The history of the selfie stretches back further than you might think. The word itself was chosen as the Oxford English Dictionary's Word of the Year in 2013, solidifying its global cultural force. Fact 6. The concept of the front-facing camera, now synonymous with the selfie, was first introduced in 2003 on the Sony Ericsson Z10, primarily intended to facilitate business video meetings. Modern high-end phones often feature multiple rear lenses, each with a specific purpose. A standard wide lens, an ultra-wide lens for landscapes, and a telephoto lens for optical zooming without image degradation. Fact 8. The quest for thinner phones led to one of the most controversial changes: the removal of the 3.5mm headphone jack, a decision pioneered by Apple with the iPhone 7 in 2016. Strong Fact 9. A key advantage of older phones, the removable battery, faded away as manufacturers began sealing batteries inside the chassis. Achieve thinner designs and improve water resistance, making repairs more difficult and costly. End of period. So when Nick pushed the white and pointed the gold spectrum of packaging to the bust, my knees. And you can get back into electricity by a second coil in the phone. The first truly foldable smartphone sold to the public was the Royal FlexPi in late 2018, beating industry giants like Samsung to the market and proving flexible screens were finally possible. Fact 12. One strange modern design was the Yoda phone, which featured a normal color screen on the front, but included a second, low-power, e-ink screen on the back for reading books or permanent notifications, much like a Kindle. Fact 13. Another wonderfully bizarre design was the LG Wing, whose main screen could swivel a full 90 degrees into a T-shape, revealing a smaller square screen underneath it to enable unique multitasking. Fact 14. Most modern phone displays utilize OLED technology, which is fundamentally different from older LCDs because black pixels are truly off, consuming far less power when displaying dark themes. Fact 15. Your phone's water resistance is measured by an IP ingress protection code. An IP68 rating means the device is dust-tight and can typically survive submersion in water up to 1.5 meters for 30 minutes. Fact 16. This remarkable water resistance is achieved through a hidden network of tiny rubber gaskets, microscopic seals, and specially formulated waterproof adhesives concealed within the phone's chassis. Fact 17. Your phone's crisp screen is covered by an incredibly thin, invisible layer called an oleophobic coating, a special polymer that actively repels skin oil and fingerprints, making the screen easy to wipe clean. Fact 18. This delicate oleophobic coating wears away slowly over time with constant use, which is precisely why older screens tend to get much smudgier and are harder to keep clean. Fact 19. While modern lithium-ion batteries don't suffer from the memory effect, they still degrade slowly, designed to hold about 80% of their original capacity after around 500 full charge cycles. Fact 20. Fast charging, while convenient, can be harder on the battery's long-term health. The heat generated by quickly pushing power into the cell is the primary enemy of a lithium-ion battery's lifespan. This is why many phones now use smart charging software that learns the user's sleep schedule and intelligently slows the charging process overnight to preserve the battery's health over the years. The SIM card, subscriber identity module, has been on a long journey of miniaturization, shrinking from the size of a credit card down to the nano SIM and now to the eSIM, a virtual digital SIM built right into the hardware. Modern high-end gaming phones require sophisticated thermal management, utilizing tiny, flattened heat pipes called vapor chambers and highly conductive graphite layers to efficiently move heat away from the processor. Fact 24. Some of the most extreme gaming phones now incorporate active cooling systems featuring internal fans, and in niche examples like the Red Magic 11 Pro, even visible flowing liquid coolant systems to keep temperatures stable during intense use. Fact 25. Haptic feedback systems, the subtle vibrations you feel when typing or interacting with the screen, have evolved far beyond simple, imprecise buzzing motors. Haptic feedback featuring internal fans, and in niche examples like the Red Magic 11 Pro, even visible flowing liquid coolant systems to keep temperatures stable during intense use. High-end phones now use precise linear actuators instead of simple spinning motors. These actuators can create varied, crisp, and distinct vibrations, making virtual buttons feel more physical and real to the touch. Fact 27. The idea of tactile feedback dates back much further than mobile phones, finding its origins in systems like the 19th century invention of Braille and early computer interfaces from the 1970s. Fact 28. Fact 28. The supply chain that creates a single modern smartphone is almost impossibly complex, relying on a global network that sources raw materials from every single continent on Earth. Fact 29. Essential materials like lithium for the battery are often sourced from vast salt flats in South America or deep mines in Australia. Fact 28. Looking forward, scientists are developing solid-state batteries, a new technology promising to be safer, charge much faster, and hold far more energy in the same amount of space, potentially leading to multi-day phone charges. And now, our long journey through time, through all these quiet stories, comes to a peaceful end.